Some of you may remember, I was actually encouraged early this morning to know somebody considerably younger than me remembered this, but some of you may remember, or some of you may have seen reruns or streamed somewhere a show called Home Improvement from back in the day. Like Home Improvement was this great little like sitcom show, right? The Taylor family was what it was largely about, and Tim was the husband and the dad in this family, and it's like every other sitcom, right? Inside of 30 minutes, you've got to solve some type of problem, deception, confusion, miscommunication, unmet expectation. Like you have to create a problem, see the problem, understand the problem, solve the problem in 30 minutes, which is actually like 22 minutes because of commercials, right? I mean, they can solve any problem in the world in 22 minutes if you're a sitcom writer. It was a great show, it'd make you laugh. Really, the genius of the writers, though, was, I think, most expressed in the neighbor to the Taylors named Wilson. And Wilson was a guy that you never actually saw all of Wilson. This is about what you got. Just Wilson was often peering over the fence, having conversations with Tim. And inevitably, these conversations would end up where Tim is talking about some family problem they're having. What is the 22-minute crisis in the Taylor home? And he would be sharing with Wilson. And Wilson, he was next level. Wilson had this sage-like wisdom all the time. He could distill things for Tim. He could make it simple for Tim. It would be very practical, and it could change the course of whatever it was that the Taylors were trying to navigate. Now, usually Tim would mess up the statement. He would misquote Wilson. He would get something wrong. He would take something profound and make it sound silly, right? But it moved things forward. It helped them solve a problem. Wilson, though, was never really, you didn't see Wilson every episode in the backyard of the Taylors, in the kitchen, in the living room watching TV. Wilson was on his side of the fence, just not really peering. He wasn't stalking. He's just having this conversation from the eyeballs up somehow, right? That was the dynamic of their relationship. And it was helpful, though. Like on some level, it was helpful. Wonder what it would have been like, though, if Wilson could have gotten around the fence, over the fence, spent more time in the backyard, in the kitchen, around the dinner table with the Taylors, in the living room watching a game or watching whatever favorite show it was for them, as they just navigated this thing of family. For us, one of the questions we could ask really early on as we jump into this series on family, one of the things we could ask, regardless of where you're at in the family season, maybe you're grandparenting, maybe you are like living as an adult and you are trying to parent in one direction and you are having to grapple with aging parents, or what does the new relationship look like? Maybe you're dating and you hope one day to get married. Maybe you're dating and you hope to marry the person you're dating right now, and maybe they're sitting next to you, and maybe I'm making it awkward. Okay? Maybe you're single and you don't ever want to get married, and that's fine. Jesus never got married. Don't think Paul in the Bible ever got married. Singleness can be just as sacred as marriage, friends. Let's not get crazy and make marriage a weird thing. Singleness can be sacred. But even if you are single and you want to be single, you might be a sibling, you might be an aunt or an uncle, you are somebody's child. You have friends that oftentimes feel like family and almost operate more like family sometimes. And as we begin to talk about family, the first question we're going to put on the table for all of us is very simply, when it comes to your current situation or your future thoughts about family, which side of the fence is God on right now? Is God on the side of the fence like Wilson, where he gives some sage advice and then you go off and try and live it, and hopefully he's still there when you have another problem that you need to come back for some sage wisdom for? Like what? Or is God on your side of the fence where he's actually living with you? Is he in the backyard with you? Is he around the dinner table? Is he sitting on the couch, watching whatever you're watching, having whatever conversation? Is he playing games with you? Is he driving in your car with whoever's in your family, whatever composition that makes up? Is he on your family FaceTime? Like, is God, which side of the fence is God on? Now, it's easy, again, to say, well, of course, he's on my side of the fence, but let's just stop for a second and ask, is he? we can get a lot of advice from God and keep God on the other side of the fence, unintentionally or intentionally. So which side of the fence is he on? Now, in order to kind of play this out and see this, we're gonna start kind of back at the beginning. Are we going to talk in the next few weeks about things like communication and conflict and unmet expectations? Of course, we have to. Absolutely. Are we going to talk about just like some very practical dynamics just around the reality of parenting? Absolutely. Absolutely, we are. Are we going to talk about things like pace and calendar and how we navigate that in all different seasons of family and what expectations we put on other dynamics of our family? What expectations do we put on our parents and our kids and our grandkids? And what expectations do we put on our grandparents? Like, we'll just talk. We'll just talk real practically about what does pace look like. Will we talk about money? Absolutely. Absolutely. Money is still one of the leading causes of divorce and family breakdown. Money that's meant to be this tool, and unfortunately, so often it's really divisive. I've never kept track, and I should just keep track for 1 year just to see, but it feels like I always know at least somebody, if not multiple somebodies, who is in the middle of family brokenness and hurt because of disputes over an inheritance. Money's supposed to be this tool, but it more times than not seems somehow to be divisive. So in the context of family, yeah, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. But before we do all that, we're gonna step back one move and try and look at the bigger picture just for a little bit. Because here's the reality, like, before we take all the parts of something like a model plane and start like breaking them apart and then putting them together and gluing them, before we do all that, we need to understand what's the plane look like. Like, what are we really like trying to build here? Before we start building a house or doing renovation or rehabbing something, we need to see, well, what's the house going to look like? Where are we actually going? What are we actually building? Before we take the pieces to a puzzle and start putting them all together and trying to figure out how they fit and what's the border look like, but before we do all that, somehow we've got to see the box top, right? Thank you. Now, because some of you, that's traumatic, though. For some of you, you're all jacked up and excited. For some of you, you're looking for a different church on your phone already. Like, I understand. Like, there's all sorts of dynamics that go with that. So let me just calm us all back down. How about this box top instead? We'll just do this, okay? It's much more scenic and beautiful, and nobody can argue with that. Pictured rocks, okay? Like that. We'll just go there. Before we can put the pieces and parts together, we need to see what is it we're actually building? What is it we're actually seeing out there somewhere? Where are we going? Instead of just grabbing little thoughts and principles and ideas from everybody around us and culture around us, what if we first intentionally said, where are we going? And how would God be on our side of the fence and shape where we're going? In order to do that, in fact, in order for us to navigate a lot of this series, we're going to spend some time in a book called Proverbs. Towards the middle of your Bible, if you've got a bound copy of your Bible you want to open up and look at today, that's great. If you're looking on a phone or whatever, it's, again, kind of in the middle of your Bible. Proverbs is a collection of wise sayings written by a guy named Solomon, who was king for a while, who for a while was wisest person ever. God said, what do you want? He said, wisdom. And that served him really well for a long time until he then started to ignore a little bit the God who gave him the wisdom in the first place, and that led to all sorts of trouble. But Solomon looked at his life, and he looked at it against the backdrop of eternity. He looked at it against the backdrop of this God who had been so generous to him, and he just compiled all of these life principles and these statements, these proverbs, these wise sayings about how to live. And inside of that, like a lot of times it'll look like, if you're just reading through a chapter of Proverbs, it'll look like all the statements, like they don't really connect to the other one. And that's true. Because he's just writing down all of these things he's learned and sees all these things that wisdom through the Spirit of God has actually taught him. But interspersed in there, we see all sorts of things about family, and we see all sorts of things about communication, all sorts of things about conflict and money and relationships and life and purpose. And so today we're going to start Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. And again, just to help us get a start and lay a framework for this series and how it plays out. It says this, where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint, or some of your translations might read, the people perish. They kind of shrivel up and die. But blessed is the one who heeds or takes into account and then follows wisdom's instruction. People cast off restraint. The picture there is people who they don't really have a direction, they don't have a vision forward, and so they just live without direction and purpose, and they live without boundaries, and they live without guide rails to get them someplace because they don't really know where it is they're trying to get. There's no picture of a future or where they're going. So they just cast off all restraint, and they just grab a hold of whatever they think in the moment will fulfill their desires. They grab a hold in the moment, whatever they think might satisfy them. Again, this is where people actually, they actually shrivel up and die. They may be living, they may be breathing, they may be having a lot of good experiences, and even look like they're accomplishing a lot in life, but something is inside them is dying because we were meant to be people with a vision, with somewhere to go. Because we're made by a God who has a vision. We're made by a God who creates with a vision and a purpose of how he envisions spending life with us and eternity with us. This is true for organizations, right? Organizations that don't have a vision, what happens? Morale goes down, people don't really understand their part and why they're doing what they're doing. Satisfaction goes down, performance goes down, right? You're only left with like trying to leverage people's pay to make them produce, right? And people shrivel up and die inside of that. It's what happens in churches, with local expressions of God's people. When there's not a vision, when there's not some kind of direction, what do people do? Well, they just cast off restraint. They go looking for the next thing, the next spiritual high or whatever it is that will kind of satisfy them. They start serving their preferences over their king, and because there's no restraint. And what happens? Churches literally shrivel up and die in those conditions. So it is what happens for people, individuals, but it also happens for organizations. It also happens for churches, and it happens for families. Families need a vision. A family is God's first and most basic institution, right? That's what he created. He said, hey, like, I'm going to put this man and this woman together. I'm going to invite them to go be fruitful. They're going to multiply. They're going to have this family. And right? God even talks about church as a family. Family, like, it needs a vision. Like, if it said, wherever you're at in your family, again, doesn't matter what season. What's the vision? Where are you going? Now, I want to go back just a little bit to the beginning of that one word forward of before people cast off restraint. You're probably, hopefully, looking at a translation that says that people need a revelation. People need a revelation. They need a revelation. They need a revealing of something. They need the curtain pulled back so they can see, oh, this is where we could go. Oh, this is what we could be made for. Oh, this is who I could be as a grandparent in this season. Oh, this is who I could be as a son of parents. Oh, this is who I could be as a sibling. They need like somebody to pull back the curtain. And here's the thing. I think revelation has the potential to convey like a spiritual dynamic. We need a spirit-inspired revelation. We need to see something that left to our own devices we wouldn't see. We need to see a vision. We need to get a picture of the future that really God in his graciousness pulled back the curtain and revealed to us. A revelation of, oh, hey, wait, here's what the next 10 years could look like. Oh, here's what the next season could look like. Here's what your role could look like in your family. Let me help you envision a future. Let me give you a revelation. Imagine what it could look like for your family not to try and keep up, not just to go from problem to problem or issue to issue or experience to experience or adventure to adventure or savings account to savings account, but imagine what it could look like to say, hey, when we're experiencing conflict and adventure and all that, we actually can see it through the lens of a God-given revelation for who we could become and for where he's taking us and what he's molding in us. And how he's helping us envision what our kids might look like, or envision our role with our grandkids, or envision our role with our aging parents, or envision our role with siblings or nieces, and that, like, what could that look like? Like we need revelation. Here's the thing. No matter where you're at in family, everybody has a vision. You right now, whether you know it or not, whether you've been intentional or not, you have a vision for your family and your role in your family. You have a vision. You have a picture of where you're going. Your picture might be limited to, I'm just going to the next crisis. Your picture might be limited to, I'm just going to the next milestone moment. Your picture might be limited to just trying to establish what you can leave your kids or your grandkids, right? But everybody has a vision. The question is, who's shaping it? Who's molding it? Who's the lead contributor to it? Is it the Spirit of the living God? Like, hey, let me reveal to you where you could be. That's when it gets so helpful. Without it, things get really messy. Let me read this to you from the Message translation. We'll toss this on the screen too, just to see it in one more version. He says, if people can't see what God is doing, like if we can't see what God is doing in our family, if we haven't taken the time to look or listen or clear our thinking enough to see it, they stumble all over themselves. But when they attend to what he reveals, they are most blessed. Listen, sometimes the reason we cycle back to the same problems inside of a family unit or a family relationship is because we haven't seen what God is trying to do, and so we're stumbling over ourselves. But when we see what he's doing and we attend to it and look at, that's when we start walking in his blessing. That's when we start walking in the advantage that comes with him. That's when we start walking in the power that comes with him, the insight that comes with him. We need a revelation. We need a revelation for what's next. What's the next season look like? Think about it like maybe a little bit like a gender reveal party. You ever been to one of those or watched one of those or had one of those or something like that? Yeah, 4 of you are courageous enough to admit it. That's cool. Here's the thing, like when the big reveal happens, right? When either, like the cake is blue or the cake is pink or the helicopter drops pink balloons or blue, whatever it is that happens, in that moment, what happens for those parents? They get a version of a revelation. And that revelation's like, oh, it's a girl. It's a girl. Or it's 2 girls. Right? I mean, it's a girl, okay? And you find out this revelation, like somebody pulls the curtain back, and in that moment, what happens? In that moment, those parents are like, oh, okay, like, Now we know we'll probably do this, or we've got to change this, or we're going to do this, or we're going to adjust mentally to this, or we're going to, right? And things start to change. But that revelation wasn't the final revelation. It wasn't the only thing, because what do those parents not know yet? They still don't know the baby's personality. They don't know how long that baby's going to be when it's born, how much it's going to weigh. They don't know what its likes and dislikes are going to be. They don't know what foods that he's going to love and what foods that baby's going to hate. They don't know what hobbies that child will grow into and whether you as a parent know anything at all about those hobbies. They don't know. It's one revelation to show us the next season. Look, wherever you're at in family, no matter how new, no matter how far away family seems, no matter how far into family life you are not beyond a God-given revelation for what is next. You're not beyond that. So what would it look like to just get a revelation for your family? What would it look like to just get a revelation for your family, a God-given revelation for your current family, maybe your future family? Some of you may get a little bit of a revelation today, a beginning that'll shape how you date and what you think about the kind of person you want to marry one day. And that's great. Start now. Start now. Start now. What would it look like? So to get there, like one of the things we just have to ask first is, where is God currently? Where is God currently? Which side of the fence? Is God on your side of the fence, like actually living life with you? Are you allowing God in all the spaces? Do you have God a little bit more in an other side of the fence consultant role? Like, do you hope once every 7 days to kind of get a fresh word from God and that'll get you through? Do you kind of go for a crisis help? Do you go for a little bit of periodic counsel to God? Or is God's invitation really like to live with you? That's God's desire. God doesn't like being on the other side of the fence. He's willing to stay there if that's where you want him to be, but it's not how he designed it. And then just so you know, like he wants to actually be in the backyard and at the dinner table and with you while you drive to work and go to school or drop off a kid at school or while you sit around and play a game or while you stand in the, he wants to be a part of all of that and all of the conversation. He wants the chance to laugh with you, not just solve your problems. So just ask currently, like not where do I assume, but if I actually stop and think, where is God right now? Where is God currently with me and with my family? And then there are just some questions we can ask. First one is really just simply this. Have I or will I surrender my family? Whatever my role is, whether I'm a teenage son or daughter, whether I'm a 30-something aunt or uncle or husband or wife, whether I'm a 70 or 80-year-old grandparent, whatever, wherever we're at, will I surrender my role and my place in the family? I, just from personal experience, I think this is one of the toughest questions. It's one of the hardest questions. The obvious answer is yes, right? I mean, we're in church. The pastor's going to say this is what okay, that's fine, right? But let's just be honest with each other. There is no thing in my life, there is not even a close second in my life. I have had to work through the choice and practice of surrendering my family, like letting go of the control, stop squeezing and gripping so hard. I've had to surrender my family more times than any other thing in my life. And again, there is not a close second. Why is that? Because it really is true if we're honest. Like the things that we love the most and need God most in are the things we actually cling to tightest because we love them most. Right? And what do I think is true about the things I love the most? I think I know what's best. I'm pretty sure. Right? Pretty sure. So I would like to just solve that for my girls. I would like to just solve that for Erica. I would like to shape and navigate and how we're going to do it. And I would like to maneuver and plot the course of how this is going to be. And over and over and over and over and over again. This is the hardest thing for me. Is to just open up my hands and say, okay, God, I will surrender so that you could reveal the vision for the next move in the next moment, so that you could, I will surrender so you can be on this side of the fence because I really don't do well when you're just on that side. So here, I will surrender this. And here's the tension, if we could just be honest with each other. I love Erica and our girls with every fiber of my being. I've said to our girls since they were born, and I mean this, I love you with my whole heart. I love you with my whole heart. Mackenzie appropriately asked me one day when she was about 6, Daddy, are you allowed to love me with your whole heart if you're supposed to actually love Jesus too? Fair question. Yes, I can love Jesus at the same time. When we surrender our family to Jesus repeatedly, what we're really doing every time is reminding ourselves that no matter how much we might love our family, God somehow loves them more. It's more perfect, it's more complete, it's more enduring, it's more pure, it's more honest. It's got better vision. It's got more strength. It's got more foresight. It's got more ability. See, I don't love anyone or anything on earth more than my family, so to somehow comprehend that God could love them more stretches the recesses of my mind and goes places my mind can't quite get. And that's okay, because I want a God who my mind can't quite fully get. Okay? But then becomes this moment of just, okay, I'm going to let that go. And when I let that go, then I'm going to have to listen, and I will listen, and I will do my best to follow, and I will mess that up sometimes. But the question is not have I one time said, oh, my family belongs to God. Oh, man, we did a parent-child dedication thing in church, and that was cool and really symbolic and all that, and so I'm probably good. No. The question is when it comes to family, Have I surrendered that? And have I also surrendered with like just the control? Have I surrendered the hurt that my family caused me? Have I surrendered the disappointment? Have I surrendered the hurt they keep causing me? Have I surrendered the aches and the longings? Have I surrendered the wounds of family who don't call and won't include and who are fighting over things with me? And would I lay all those down so I could get a fresh revelation of how and where we go? A lot of us who are in parenting or grandparenting stages, I feel like the world has pushed us to spend a lot of time trying to keep kids safe and navigate a fragility that maybe isn't true about them in the first place, but we're trying to calm things down. We're trying to slow the world down. We're trying to help navigate anxiety and uncertainty, all of which is real things, right? And inside this surrender, we might actually get a gift that we didn't know was available. Look at this, again, from Proverbs. From Proverbs 14:26. In the fear of the Lord, which is really more about just not this like trembling, I got to run from God, but this awe of God that can knock us to our knees and face down. And it's also this idea of I'm terrified and I hate the thought of being separated from God. I have so much reverence for God, awe of God, amazement at God, wonder at God, that I just can't stand the mere thought of being away from God. So I have this complete, this fear of the Lord. And the fear of the Lord, one has a strong confidence. And then listen to the end. And his children or his grandchildren or his nieces and nephews could actually find refuge in that. They could find a calming, restful place. When you and I, as parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles or mentors or investors or older siblings or whatever it is, when you and I have this fear and awe and wonder of God that keeps us attached to him, it gives us a strong confidence. And in a strong confidence, there's a stability. There's a steadiness. There's a dependability. And in all of that, our kids find a refuge. Man, we're looking for a million answers. We're looking for a million answers to help people with all the things that stress them out and fray them and everything. And what if the first answer is, let's just be people who cultivate our own fear of the Lord? What if we were first people who just said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep myself connected to God, amazed by him, in awe of him, desperate for him, just stunned by his beauty and his strength and his complexity. And by doing that, some people in my family would actually have a refuge just because of that. Before I do anything else, I will fear the Lord most. Now, this is true often here. I'm going to point it out this time, but I am preaching way better than you're responding in that moment because that could have changed your life. If you don't get anything else, you got to get this first. If you don't get anything else, start here. If you don't get anything else, the next week, start there. If you want to know what you can offer that gives the generation following you and your family a place to rest, a place to catch their breath, a place to be rejuvenated, a place that's safe, a place that it is not in all your answers. It is not in all the abilities and talents and the over-the-fence sage wisdom we bring to the table. It is in, do we have this holy awe and wonder of the God who loves us and we can't stand the thought of being without? Amen. Thank you, somebody. I mean, that's Solomon's wisdom. That's not fear God. Be amazed. Cultivate some of that. You don't need a fresh revelation for that. God said do it. That's part of what we're living in. Would we surrender our family? Would we let go and let that give us a strong confidence because we just trust in the bigness and the goodness of God? Let me just quickly give you a couple more. Maybe for you in a certain season of family life, maybe you ask this question on your own. Maybe you're single, you ask it on your own for the future. Just these last few questions. If you've got a family and everybody's at the right age and you can have this discussion, though, it's great to have together. What just as a family, what makes you mad? What makes you mad as a family? Not at each other, but what is it about family that maybe you look back at your own family and say, man, that makes me mad. It makes me mad what happened and how so-and-so is treated or how we were treated or how we handled that conflict or what we had access to or didn't have access. That makes me mad. What makes us mad right now when we look at life of family around us in our culture and in the world? What makes us mad in that that mad might stir a vision of what could be. It might stir a little revelation of, oh, well, we don't have to be part of that, and we don't have to sit around and just be mad at it. We could navigate a different course. We could have God's direction in a different way here. Partner with that a little bit is just, hey, what makes you sad? Like, sit down as a family and tell your story. What makes you sad? What makes you sad about your past? What makes you sad about your current? What are the words that leave an impact? What are the words that scathe a little bit? What are the words that just ding you up and hurt a little bit? What happens inside of all of that? What makes you sad? What is it when you look at the families around you in the world and the culture? What makes you sad? What just grieves your heart? And then let that potentially pull back the curtain a little bit and say, oh, this is how God might invite our family into healing. This is how God might invite our family to navigate conflict and hurt. This might be how God invites us to be a family that gives beyond ourselves, to causes that make us sad related to family in general. This might be how God would shape, getting in touch with our heart and the core of our being. And then just what makes you glad. And we've talked about these questions for discovering life purpose and everything else, but they just fit for this family revelation. What makes you glad? What makes you glad from your past? If you're a parent, do your kids know what made you glad from your past? Do they know? Right now, whatever season you're in, with your grandkids, your nieces, nephews, sibs, whatever, what is it that when you do it, it just brings you joy? And listen, maybe it's playing a game, maybe it's taking a trip, maybe it's experience, maybe it's a type of conversation, but go one level lower than just the activity you're engaged in. What is it that's actually happening while that activity is taking place that somehow brings fuel and joy to your life? Man, we always love when we play this game together. Okay, that's great. Keep playing that game. But what is it that's happening while you play the game? Because it might just give revelation. Oh man, look at all the things we could experience that bring us joy together. What is it that you pray for your family? What is it that you pray for your kids or your parents or your spouse or your grandkids or your grandparents? What is it you pray for your family that somehow when you pray it, you know you're stepping in with Jesus really well because it stirs a joy in you. There's something that feels like a lot of life in you. What makes you glad? And those three questions may just, again, peel back the curtain a little bit and say, this is where we can go. Again, you might be in a season where you just ask the questions on your own. You might be grandparenting and you're going to have these conversations with a spouse or a friend who's a grandparent or something. You say, hey, as grandparents, when we think about our family, what does this for us? You might be dating, and I'll tell you what, man, if answers are all different to those three questions, you don't have to run, but you should move. Away from each other, right? I mean, just let it be a grid. Oh, man, we're not going to share the same vision. We're not going to have the same vision. God's not revealing the same thing about family to us. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's acknowledge it. Let's go back to where we started. Which side of the fence is God on when it comes to your family? Is he on the Wilson side, or we letting him over into the backyard and into the dining room and into the basement where the ping pong table is, or onto the couch to watch something with us or have a discussion? Is he having some meals with us? Which side of the fence is God on? Is he on the side of the fence that, okay, yep, we mention him at a family prayer time around a meal, or we do something with our kids at night before they go to bed, or read them a Bible story or something? But other than, he's just kind of over. Other than that, maybe I want to include him, but he's just over there. Where is he? And once we invite him, oh no, come do the whole of life with me. Once we really surrender this thing, say, okay, God, really, we want your leadership in this. Then we got a chance to get a very Jesus-shaped, Spirit-inspired revelation, so that we don't have to cast off restraints, so that our place in the family, we don't have to experience shriveling up and dying. We might experience lots of pain and even rejection, but we can stay invigorated and purposeful through the hardest times because there's a revelation of what we can be doing and where we can be heading. Let me give you one last proverb. Solomon wrote this: commit to the Lord. Just commit. Just say, I'm in. God, here, I'm in. You take this. Commit to the Lord whatever you do. and he'll do his thing. He'll establish your plans. You don't have to navigate. Please don't navigate the complexity that is family on your own. Imagine what it would be like to commit family, to not feel the pressure to have all the answers, to steward the blessing that is family. You have to do that on your own. Say, here, God, I just commit this thing to you, and I commit to follow you in it. Are we going to talk about communication and conflict and unmet expectations? You bet. We talk about money and the tension it can cause and how to avoid some of that? Absolutely. We talk about pace and how crowded the calendar gets, and we're not sure how to make use of family time or even get family time or what counts as family time. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it starts right here. It starts right here. It starts right here. What if we could get a Spirit-inspired revelation for this moment in time and this season for God's gift of family to us?